What's up, guys? Hope you have a fantastic week so far. Once again, another Warhammer video for you guys. This time we'll be looking at a gene seed, Warhammer 40k. It's like a lore, space marine kind of thing, because we did a few videos regarding like the gene seed and actually how like the internal organs of a space marine works. And not shocked by this, but there's of course a lot more lore and explanation to it, which is something I need, and probably some of you guys probably don't know much about this. I am intrigued and looking forward to it just because, I know the basics of, Space Marine. I just know they have extra organs. They do, they can funnel out poisons. They can help you breathe. It's basically stuff that makes them even more invincible than they already are, which is just insane. They're basically freaks, literally and physically, But yeah, if you guys want to check this out, I definitely recommend it. These guys put a ton of effort into their videos, like any other content creator that I actually react to. Original video will be in the description. Show them some love. They basically are the reason why 40k has gotten to me initially. That if it wasn't for them making these videos and having such passion about, this verse and the community itself, then I wouldn't be here right now. So make sure you guys show them some love. If you guys want to, you guys like and subscribe. Everything will be in the description. Check it out, please. All right, let's get to it.
For about a year and a half now, I have been getting requests to cover 40k in depth concerning
what's
biological changes to the human form. Let me just ask y'all one
Whoa.
thing. Why would you do this?
If that's a cinematic, please put the link to that in the description. I want to watch that.
I've spent like
That's
6
awesome.
hours reading, and I am just now making it past the shortened lore version and history to about the 20k
6
time
hours.
frame. Based on this, I want to kind of make a disclaimer. Sweet Mary Mother of crap, is this universe not completely and utterly ridiculously expansive? I mean, good lord,
Yeah.
I could write a dissertation part 1 and 2 discussing just the genetic physical changes of the abnormals alone. So based on this expansiveness, these videos would either have to gloss over a lot or be broken up into parts. I'm choosing the latter over the former because actually the lore is incredibly interesting and everything should be discussed to its fullest extent, at least in my personal opinion. So because of this, today we will be talking about the gene seed, what it is, and what are some of the actual implants. Later we will discuss actual implants and how they affect biology. So to quote
Why did it zoom
Samuel
in
L.
there,
Jackson,
Hold on to your butts.
Why had to zoom in there? If you guys know what I'm talking about, you know.
because something even as simple as Space Marines will quite literally take like 19
All right, first of all, these guys ain't simple. I think we covered it a few videos ago where like it explained how like each faction basically picks their candidates for a potential space marine. That alone is a long process. Then not even the training aspect, but just the initiation process of downgrading the select individuals. The initial candidates takes a long time, and then each faction has their own specific trials that you must do. You know what I'm saying? And then after that, you have to, I think, do like recon stuff on it, like you have to get combat experience. And then after that, you do through all the extensive surgeries over like 20 years or something. It might be longer than that. So like space marines are not simple. I learned that they are more than just a tank on the battlefield. They are very deeply entrenched in their specific factions culture. I mean, even the gene seed itself is like a relic. Something that's like so precious.
videos. Discussing other topics will obviously result in more videos down the line. This won't become like a pure 40k channel or anything like that, but there's just a ridiculous amount of content to go over, so in the coming years, there will be a lot to talk about. Anyhow, let's discuss why we are actually here. The gene seed from the Warhammer 40k universe, and what it actually does, and what changes to the human's physical form it causes. So it all begins when a human female and a human male love each other very much, and would like to create a 7.5 foot tall monster with multiple extra organs capable of ripping apart orcs like they were made out of tissue paper. The gene
Holy
seed is
shit.
essentially a collection of organs in a viral machine cobbled together under the name to kind of sort of explain what they are. Originally, during the 30th millennium, the gene seed was created and designed by the man who would later become the Emperor of Mankind and the scientists of the Biotechnical Division. This genetic research compound was located under the Himalayan mountains, where experiments would be conducted
Wow.
on the human genetic structure in an effort to create more effective warriors and, in general, cure humanity of its shortcomings. Seems that most geneticists start out like this, and then as time continues, much like genetic drift, so do their goals. Eventually, through trial and error, which is an inference on my part because just like with the nature of gene alterations, nothing is assured, successes were had through the understanding and knowledge that would yield the ability to form organs within a human male that would aid them in the battlefield. On top of this, their physical stature and power would be changed to make them stronger, faster, and more resilient than the most fit humans currently alive, or were that really alive in any time period. So essentially, think of it this way, which interestingly relates to the real world that we live in, just kind of the earliest iteration of it. Viruses were used to implant DNA into cellular clusters to form them into kind of what was wanted. Along with this, germ cells were used to help facilitate the growth of specialized organs through interaction with metabolism and the viruses, which would make them grow properly.
Sorry guys, there was an ad, which is really early in the video. That sucks. But if you guys see a weird cut there, there's an ad. My apologies.
Have half of this process actually done now. For anyone who watches this channel regularly, it is known as CRISPR and Cas9. A virus can be loaded up with genes, and utilizing CRISPR in the body, genetic coding can be repaired or altered depending on the desired effect, which has the potential to not only cure us of genetic disease, but also stop other ailments like cancer, parasites, and other viruses, as well as bacteria, from ransacking our meat suits. But if you'd like an entire breakdown on what CRISPR does, head over to my second channel, Croatoan Medical, and I have a video there waiting for you. But just know that for the time being that this form of genetic alteration closely resembles what we already have, which I thought was actually pretty interesting.
And just something to add to this. This is my thing. So I'm no expert in this at all, but like, he kind of makes it sound like really good, and like, oh, you can, cure this, do this. If you guys really think about it for a second, you know that there's a far, far greater chance that something can go wrong when you mess with DNA in any kind of aspect. You know what I'm saying? Because if you guys didn't know this, which I'm assuming most of you do, your DNA is the makeup that makes you you. When you're, still in the process of baby in your mother's womb, and your DNA's basically informed. It's what distinguishes you between potentially having blue eyes or green eyes or brown eyes. That's what DNA is. If there's a way you could change that blue-eyed strand of DNA, you could change your eye color permanently, So that's why I think in like the last video we watched when it comes to space marines and their organs is that they do regular tests on the gene C itself because, like I just said, genetics is, well, it's iffy. It can go wrong. So there are certain defects, like I think the blood angels, you can correct me if I'm wrong there, but like they need blood to sustain themselves in a way. They not even like to sustain, they just need blood. They're like vampires, they need blood. I don't think their gene C was designed to have that kind of defect. It just kind of happens. That's how genetics work. So kind of a tough thing.
The germ cells
I'm
are
not
there
smart
after
enough
the
for this.
injection
That's
to
just
provide
my
the
input.
necessary biomass to grow whatever organ you would really need to be attempting to grow. So for instance, if you wanted to grow a kidney, you wouldn't take like neural tissue and alter it to a kidney, as that would be a waste of time and resources. Instead, these germ cells interacting with the virus possessing the necessary instructions in DNA will form the germ cells into what it needs to be through division and replication until eventually the desired organ has been formed. Using the body's own physiological processes, these organs can be formed over time, integrating them into the body using the body's own resources. This makes sure that there is really no immunological response to the formation of this organ. This is just really kind of one way in which the gene seed is applied to the human form. Another way is actual implantation of a specific organ. The organ can be grown outside of the human body and then implanted and connected to specific systems that need to be bolstered, which we will kind of discuss in a moment. In this way, more than likely human stem cells from that human would be used to grow these organs, as this would also not really spark any immunological response by the body, and immune system suppressing medicines would not be necessary. This is not to say, however, that the gene seed is all external physical effects such as extra organs. Many of these implants do interact with specifically the brain to alter what is perceived as normal and change how the brain functions. Because of these neural implants, the patient must be alive and functioning, which means they can't be put under, and pain is usually not dulled by the use of painkillers, making this process extremely horrifying if you're the one who's getting these these implants.
Makes
the effect
sense.
of the gene seed
Why not, right?
implantations and pure alteration via viruses to the brain would have more metabolic effects on the body, yielding the results that were desired. Whereas the physical changes to the body further along in the alteration process brought on by organ implants to the body are changes that would be kind of more battle-bearing effects. Now this all sounds...
See, that kind of makes sense. Like if you think of like, when he explained that, you can't be put under, you need to like connect to your brain. Is like think about how like your heart works, or basically how any function in your body works. It's a lot of things are just happen. It's just very what's the word? Autonomous, right? Is that the word for it? But it just happens. So if you can build that connection, let's say you get that extra organ that allows you to, work at another lung that can process poison air out and whatnot. Well, instead of you sitting there mentally thinking about it to switch that, your body just does it because the organ grows and connects to your brain. It just does it with little to no delay. It's like, oh, it's there, switch, boom. That's just like how your brain works. You think about all the stuff that happens to you. Like, have you ever felt pain before? How quick that reaction is. It's a connection to that specific nerves and body part to your brain. That's how you feel it. That's why you pull your hand away if you touch something hot or something. It's like you keep your hand there and just like look at it when it's like sizzling. You know what I'm saying? But that's interesting. I never thought that deep about it. So that's cool.
It's pretty great, doesn't it? Why aren't all humans given this genetic alteration to their bodies to make even something like a guardsman an unstoppable battle machine? Well, there's actually a few reasons. The first being that over the course of 10,000 years, genetic drift of these implants has caused mutations to arise within most forms, much like we see, the random mutations that happen in DNA. Secondly, very few chapters actually possess pure forms, or really the purest forms, because there is no pure form anymore. Because of this, should you administer this to everyone, that would stretch the amount way too thin and would also potentially yield more monsters in the process through these mutations that have happened. Humanity at this point is massively large, the empire stretches extremely far and wide, and many humans have been born and are still surviving at this point in time. The gene seed is something to be closely monitored to make sure maladaptive traits do not begin to crop up. Usually, this is monitored by tech priests. The sheer scope and magnitude of keeping all humans under a watchful eye would be ludicrous. And not to mention, all humans don't really have great intentions, so you really want to make them like an unstoppable machine.
Especially in the 40K verse.
Only specific humans are given the gene therapy to become the hulking behemoths they are. But for a human who actually does undergo this process and is accepted into these chapters, such as the Grey Knights, the Ultramarines, or the Dark Angels, what exactly can they expect in terms of changes? And there will actually, just so you guys know, be a breakdown of all three in the coming months to discuss the differences in terms of strengths and weaknesses. But for now, biologically, what is the general alteration that is done to their bodies to ready them for the fights between them and the enemies that they face on a near constant basis? Let's get to that. There are roughly 19 phases in total, which comes out to 19 implants in total, but there are an extra 3, but those aren't regularly given out. The implants are really only for young boys between the ages of 10 to 14, and that's when you need to start, but each one has varying times that they are started, with the final implant given around the ages of 16 to 18 years old, and usually no later than that. The first through third phase of implants given are a secondary heart, osmodula, and biscopia. What are these specifically responsible for? Let's run down a short description to understand their necessity, but there will be a more extensive video discussing the impacts of these changes in future videos. Again, the lore is quite expansive concerning these alterations.
Sorry to cut there, guys, again. There's another ad. YouTube likes to put them in at the worst times. Apologies.
The secondary heart, which is referred to as the maintainer, is the first and surprisingly least difficult to implant into the human body. This implant is essentially a smaller version of the original heart and is implanted into the circulatory system near the original heart as well. With this second heart pumping, this has a cascade of effects on the body, leading to a much better warrior. First, the extra force in which the blood is pumped takes strain off the original heart. In turn, this also allows more blood and subsequently oxygen to flow through the body. With this implant completed, should the original heart suffer life-ending damage, the second heart can take over the duties and keep the blood pumping until the soldier can get to a medical facility to have it repaired. Next, the osmodula, also referred to as iron heart, is the second implant a human will receive, and it is imperative this is completed during the portion of life before puberty, when the body is about to undergo a rapid growth rate. This is a neural organ implanted near the pituitary gland, which will become a permanent part of the soldier's endocrine system. Here, it will facilitate the release of something we should all be familiar with at this point: human growth growth hormone. Since a human has not been altered too much before this point, when the hormone begins to ramp up, their body is more apt to adapt to these changes because it still needs to grow. When the hormone is released, the future soldier is also given a diet with microscopic ceramic-based materials. They will act to help the bone and musculoskeletal system grow. With these hormones flooding the body and the scaffolding in place to help it grow, a 10-year-old will be tremendous in stature compared to any other standard homegrown human their age, and more than likely larger than any regular human regardless of age. Once this implant has taken hold, the body will complete its growing ceiling at roughly 7 to 7.5 feet, or roughly 2.1 to 2.3 meters tall. This is taller than Master Chief in full Mjolnir armor for reference. The muscle mass contained within the soldier will also be well outside the normal ranges of what our bodies can currently hold due to resource limitations and genetic cutoffs. But with everything in place for an ultramarine, they are able to continue well past what is normal. Another thing to note about bone growth changes, however, is in reality there are costs and there are benefits. One of the perceived benefits of this implant is that the ribs fuse into a hard shell, making them virtually impenetrable to projectiles. The perceived cost is that during surgery, this makes it quite difficult to get through to fix organ damage.
Good point.
But in reality, the real cost is that our ribs are flexible because this actually helps us breathe. Without it, our lungs cannot properly expand, and as such, our breathing ability is greatly reduced. This disease is known as spondylocostal dysplasia and can be life-threatening. Usually your ribs have to be broken to get them to unfuse, and the recovery time is massive. So I suppose there must be a workaround for ultramarines should this be the case. So the third implant is called biscopia, which is colloquially known as the Forge of Strength. This organ is implanted into the chest and works in conjunction with the osmodula. While the osmodula has more of an effect on bones and a secondary effect on muscle, biscopia is all about that muscle, baby. This is a spherical organ that controls hormones more than anything else, and in doing so, will bring a Space Marine's physical combat and survivability up to superhuman levels. The president of this hormone, which is more than likely based upon the muscle-building hormone known as IGF-1, will
more efficient
stimulate muscle
steroids, right?
growth on a wide level, resulting in a Marine's physical strength being strong.
I'm just gonna call it from now on. Like if I talk about the Space Marine's physical strength and stature, I'm just gonna call it because of that steroid organ. Just pump steroids.
Enough to deal devastating blows in hand-to-hand combat, as well as
awesome.
carry what would be virtually impossible for even an Olympic bodybuilder to hold. This has allowed them to come out on top where infantrymen have fallen in droves simply due to their ridiculous strength. With your body growing at this ridiculous rate and muscles sucking up more and more blood and oxygen as well as nutrients to function, the hearts would be strained to provide any of this with the standard carrying capacity of blood currently. This would invariably lead to things like syncope, exhaustion, and slow recovery times after fighting, if not for the fourth implant. This implant is known as hemastmin, or the blood maker. This is the answer to supplying the body with the necessary fuel to keep it going. Typically implanted in the aorta of a person, this implant will alter the chemical composition of a Marine's blood to carry more oxygen and nutrients more efficiently.
Wow.
But as time continues on, battles rage, energy is spent, bones are broken, and muscle is torn, there would need to be an answer for this. Currently, our bodies, by comparison, would have an extremely slow healing time to that of a Space Marine's. I mean, in reality, our bodies do their best to heal. In a lot of ways, humans can bounce back from things that would end other animals. But this is deemed too slow. Imagine it this way. You're driving a Honda Civic, which is your body, and the engine is your healing factor. A Honda Civic engine has no problem powering a Civic, but now drop that same engine into a semi hauling a full trailer, and it's not going to be enough. The same premise is to why this next implant exists, known as Laramann's organ. Its explicit purpose is to heal the body by producing scar tissue and stopping blood loss. The organ is the same shape as the liver, but is smaller and implanted into the chest cavity. Its purpose is to release a biosynthetic cell that acts similar to platelets in the body, which, if you didn't know, platelets are what kind of group up and will stop you from bleeding. But these biosynthetic cells will attach themselves to leukocytes and quickly move to the area of damage.
There's another ad. I am so sorry, guys. YouTube. So sorry, guys.
We assume that they respond to the same chemical messengers that tell blood clots to form, but where natural blood clots fail due to size of a wound, these synthetic cells will thrive. They will quickly cover a gushing wound and fuse it into scar tissue, sealing it entirely, keeping the blood where it needs to be.
Wow.
Should a bone break, such as the femur or pelvis, which can actually lead to a bleed out, it will do the same, severely limiting the loss of blood. Due to this, Space Marines are seen as nearly invincible as they do not succumb to wounds that would lead to a bleed out for any human really in about 30 30 seconds. And the
That's
final implant we will get
ridiculous.
to today is necessary for prolonged conflicts that plague humanity in the 40k universe. This particular implant is known as the catalapsian node, which is implanted in the back of the cerebrum near the brainstem. As humans have evolved on Earth and are accustomed to day and night cycles, our hormones have centered around this single ideology: when it's night, get to sleep. Now currently it's not fully understood why we sleep, but we know that the effects of not receiving sleep are hallucinations, concentration issues, comas, and eventually mental deterioration leading to getting bodied. Without sleep, our brains suffer. It's just as simple as that. This node is somewhat of an answer, but only a temporary fix to the necessity of sleep. A Space Marine can shut off portions of their brain while still remaining active and alert.
Oh my
When fatigue
gosh, that's
hormones
awesome.
begin to rise, the brain starts screaming for sleep, but they can subsequently shut down and put
That's
a part
not
of their
awesome. Oh
brain
my
into
gosh, they're
sleep.
effing those
However,
people
this
up.
would have different effects on them depending on which part they shut down. Say you need to shut down your temporal lobes, right? This can lead to difficulty speaking, hearing, and discerning what's real around you despite what you see. The occipital lobe would not be recommended to shut down, seeing as this has been associated with vision and would completely and severely hamper, as well as
How
probably
fast
give you
they are, bro.
hallucinations, which would be prevalent in your
Sheesh.
field of view. However strange this may sound, the idea is actually based upon animals in the world who do this, specifically the bottlenose dolphin. Dolphins are able to shut down some of their brain function while remaining alert in the ocean for predators that may be trying to sneak up on them. This would be an invaluable
dope.
asset for soldiers to possess, and is shown as such when a group of Space Marines were up for 328 hours straight, or roughly 13.6 days in battle against the orcs on Ren's world. 2 weeks is all it takes to completely body a normal Homo sapiens, and even well before that, we would be completely useless in battle. This suggests that using this method and the success
And the thing I had too is also just focus too. You know, it's like if you guys want to try to stay up really late and constantly play games at the highest level you can. Just play your favorite game at the highest level you can. Eventually, you just can't do it anymore. Then just fatigue and you just can't focus. So it's not even the fact that you'll be having hallucinations and whatnot, but fatigue and just not having concentration would get you probably first. At least for me, it does.
shown by the Space Marines, they could, in theory, go longer without succumbing to their biological constants. However, it would not be recommended. So good lord, we only got to like 6 implants, but don't worry, the rest are coming in part 2. It's becoming apparent that I'm really gonna need to make longer videos for 40k, as there is so much information
There's
to
so much
cover.
information.
Anyhow, I hope you guys enjoyed, and if I missed
That was awesome. That's it. That's honestly something I needed, just because like he covered it in such a way that you actually got to see where the implants would sit. Like not just seeing like a picture of it, but having like a physical, well, not physical like in your hands, but seeing like a 3D kind of like representation of it definitely helped. At least for me a little bit. 'Cause I'm more of a visual learner, so just seeing it kind of like puts like a little bit like perspective on it a little bit. So I enjoyed that, and the way he just like talked about it was just smooth and it just made sense to me. For someone who doesn't know shit about Warhammer, it made sense. So if it did for me, it definitely did for you guys. I mean, come on, if you guys watch any of my content up until this point, I don't know shit. Let's just be honest, But that was awesome. I'll definitely get into part 2. Fantastic video, did a great job. Make sure you guys go to his video, it'll be in the description, show him some love. Again, he did a phenomenal job, and he deserves at least 1 million subscribers. He had 732k, he deserves more. He did a phenomenal job. He put a lot of time and effort into this, so he deserves it. You guys like and subscribe as well, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Take it easy.